Listen up, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and agents. You're in the right place, unlocking the secrets to real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Titanium Vault, hosted by RJ Bates III. Here's RJ.
Hello and welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Mark Podolsky. Mark, how are you doing today?
RJ, pulse is normal, respiration's fine. I'm really excited and honored and humbled to be on the Titanium Vault.
Well, there you go. You're taking the words out of my mouth because I'm the one that's honored and humbled to have you on. So why don't you take a second to introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is that you do in real estate investing?
Sure. So, basically in 2000, I was a investment banker, and I was specializing in mergers and acquisitions with private equity groups. Mid-market stuff, 5 to 500 million in enterprise value. And RJ, I hated it. I had a 45-minute commute to work and back. I was micromanaged. It was long hours. It was high pressure, and I had no control over these deals. And that's like the worst feeling too. And so it got so bad for me that I wouldn't get the Sunday blues anticipating Monday coming around. I'd get the Friday blues anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. So my firm hires this guy, and he's telling me that on the side, like a little side hustle, he's going to tax deed auctions. He's buying up raw land, pennies on the dollar. He's flipping them online. Again, this is 2000. And he's making a 300% return on his investment. So, RJ, I'm looking at companies all day long. And a great company has 15% EBITDA margins or free cash flow. Great company. Average company is 10%, and I'm looking at companies all day long less than 10%. So I don't believe him, and I've got $3,000 saved up for car repairs. I go to New Mexico with him. I do exactly what he says. I buy up 10 half-acre parcels at an average price of $300 each. I put them online. They all sell for an average price of $1,200 each cash. It worked 300%. So I took all that money. I went to another tax deed auction in Arizona, again, 2000. No one's in the room. I'm buying up lots, acreage left and right for nothing. And over the next 6 months, I sold all that land, and I made over $92,000 cash. So I said to my wife, I'm like, honey, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to invest in land full time. And she said, absolutely not. She was pregnant at the time. I said, okay. So I worked part-time on the land investing business for about 18 months until the land investing income exceeded the investment banking income. And then I quit, and I've been doing it full time ever since. I've done over 5,200 land flips. And the way that I do it is a little bit unique, which I'm really excited to share with you.
Yes, let's go back to the part where you talk about you were miserable in your job because this was one of those situations when I got started in the real estate investing. I was already an entrepreneur and I had a general contracting business. And all of my friends and family were very concerned when I started talking about I'm going to go into real estate investing. And the reason why they were concerned is because I had put off this fake persona that I was so happy with my current business. And that was just because I was posting pictures on Facebook and I was like, hey, look at this beautiful kitchen I did or this beautiful bathroom. And they were actually concerned that I was making a mistake in my life. Outside of your wife, did you have anybody in your inner circle that was concerned when you wanted to make that change because they viewed you as a successful businessman in the business or in the career that you had?
It's so funny because now that I think about it, nobody encouraged me to quit my job.
Right.
Not one friend. My parents were scared to death for my security, for my family's security. My in-laws were scared to death. And, from an ego standpoint, telling people that you work in mergers and acquisitions with private equity groups sounds really good, right? Like that's the best part of that job. is going to a party and telling people what you do.
Right.
Everything else in between is miserable. and so, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately what really helped me was, and it's kind of funny to say it now, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Reading that helped motivate me. And I kind of was like, okay, I only live once, right? I mean, let me just try this. What's the worst case scenario? And I remember having this conversation with my wife, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that we own raw land. It's an asset, right? Maybe I could barter with my dentist and get free dentistry for a year, or I could barter with the barber and get free haircuts for a year. We're not going to get stuck with this land. And even if we do, well, it's not that bad. It's like, it's an asset. I'm not filling up the garage with a bunch of Amway vitamins,
right?
And then the other thing was, I'm already really unhappy, and have no purpose with my life. Like, okay, I'll get another job if the land investing doesn't work out. And that was kind of what the plan was. And I sort of convinced everybody, look, I'm not crazy. I'm not irresponsible. I get that, this looks risky, but I think it's riskier living the way I'm living. I'm going to have a heart attack from stress in about 5 years. So it's either dead mark or live mark. Which one do you want?
It's funny you say that, though, because I experienced the same thing. Like, nobody thought I was making the right decision. Everybody thought that this was going to be a terrible decision and it was going to have this negative impact on my family. And at the end of the day, nobody truly understood how miserable I was. Even though I even owned my own business, it was not the career path that I was supposed to be going down. And I had almost created myself another job. Like, I left the job so I could be my own boss, and then I created another job that I hated. And it was just, everybody was telling me, be careful. And what I've come to realize is that if you're experiencing those same things and you want to get into either, wholesaling or flipping or even buying raw land like you are, whatever different path that you want to take, you need to surround yourself with people that have already done that and have achieved success in those different worlds, so you can create your own support group within that industry. And I see that nowadays. Unfortunately for you, this was before social media really took off, but nowadays on Facebook, there's so many Facebook groups that you can get on there and be around people that really truly like lift each other up. And the more experienced people share their stories and their experiences, and it helps people get started. And so for anybody, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but before we went too far in the interview, I just kind of wanted to touch base on that because I think that's vitally important for people that want to get started. So once you made that decision to go full time into investing in the land, where did you go? How did you start creating an actual business for yourself?
So, for the longest time, from let's say 2001 to about 2010, I was just flipping land for cash. And I mean, you know how it was from 2001 to 2008, right? Mm-hmm. Like, anyone could have made money in real estate. And so I was making, a lot of money. And what I did was really dumb because, having no experience in a real estate cycle or an economic cycle, I let Parkinson's law of money take hold. So, Parkinson's law of time will fill to, work will fill to the time allotted. So if you give yourself a week to complete a project, it'll take a week. Take that same project and give yourself 3 days, it'll take 3 days. Well, I was doing the same thing with money. So the more money I made, the more money I spent trying to feel like, oh, now I'm a success. And ultimately what happened was I I created a terrible mess for myself and my family and took a huge hit to the ego, which really in 2010, so in my raw land niche, we're on like the tail of real estate, right? Let's say commercial residential is the head. Mm-hmm. We're the long tail. So I didn't really get hit till 2010. And we didn't recover till, maybe 2014 while other people were recovering. And so essentially it wasn't until about 2010 I really started treating it like a business, putting systems into place, delegating, automating, and really start doing the model that I do now, which is more owner financing, making the land cash flow as opposed to starting, from day one again after a flip. So, basically today, the way that I work my model is, so RJ, where do you live?
I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
You're in Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, so you're in Fort Worth, Texas, and let's just say, for example, you have a 40-acre parcel in Nevada that owes $200 in back taxes. So I go to the county treasurer and it's like, oh my gosh, RJ Bates lives in Texas and owes $200 in back taxes on this land in Nevada. So you're advertising two things to me. Number one, you have no emotional attachment to that raw land, and because you don't live there. It's not like you're visiting it all the time. Number two, you're distressed in some way. When we don't value something anymore, we don't pay for it, and you owe back taxes. So I don't know what's going on with you, but something's going on. And so what I'll do is I'll look at the last 12 to 18 months of comparable sales in that area. And let's just say for our purposes, that 40-acre parcel is selling for $10,000 retail. All I'm going to do is divide by 4. And that gets me what Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety. So the most I'm going to pay for your 40 acres, RJ, is $2,500. So I'm not like the housing guys where I say I'm interested in buying your house, and they're like, I'm interested in selling my house, and I'm in the appraisal business all day long. I'm actually giving you an actual offer on that raw land. My response rate on that is 3 to 5%, except that quote unquote top dollar offer of 25 cents on the dollar. So now you accept that offer because $2,500 is better than nothing, and you're going to lose the property to a tax deed sale or tax lien investor, and so you accept. And now I go through due diligence or in-depth research. I want to make sure, number one, you actually own the property. Number two, back taxes are only $200. The back taxes aren't going to kill my margin. Number three, there's no HOAs or code enforcement issues. Number four, there's no breaks in the chain of title, and on and on and on, right? We got a checklist. And so everything checks out, and now I'm going to buy your property for $2,500. And the way I'm going to sell it, I'm going to sell it in 30 days or less. RJ, do you know who's going to buy that property right away?
I
got not. A best built-in buyer.
Who's that?
The neighbors. The neighbors.
There you go. The neighbors. Yes.
So I'm going to send out neighbor letters saying, hey, look, before I go to the open market, protect your privacy, expand your holdings, protect your views. And so oftentimes the neighbors will buy it for $10,000. So what I'll do then is I'm going to say, okay, look, the price is $10,000. You're going to put $2,500 as a down payment. So I'm going to get my money out on the down payment, or let's say within 6 months of that down payment, right? And now I'm going to make it a car payment. Let's say $449 a month at 9% interest over the next 8 years. So what I've done is I've created a passive income stream of $449 a month, and I don't have to deal with any renters, rehabs, renovations, or rodents. And because I'm not dealing with a tenant, I'm exempt from Dodd-Frank, the SAFE Act, and RESPA, or any of this onerous real estate legislation. And that's basically the model. So the game that we play then is, can we create enough of these land notes where our passive income exceeds our fixed expenses, and then we're working because we want to, not because we have to. And that's the model.
I love that. So when you're reaching out to the neighbors, are you sending them direct mail? Are you cold calling them? How are you contacting them?
So we're going to get the addresses via the internet, like GIS maps, so we're going to send direct mail.
Gotcha. And when you
there's something that I think there's more gravity, there's more weight to a mailer than there's a phone call, and no one picks up the phone today, anyways.
That is true. That is true. So when you locate the tax delinquent land, you're also, how are you direct mail as well?
Direct mail, yeah.
So all of your marketing you're doing is direct mail, and that's how you're finding these. And
well, not all of it. So let's say, for example, in our illustration, that your 40 acres, the neighbors pass on the deal. Well, then I'm going to go to my buyers list.
Right.
And these people that have opted in for something of value, we teach them how to be better land investors, and we send them deals of the week. So oftentimes the buyers list will buy it. If the buyers list passes, then we'll go to a little website you probably never heard of called Craigslist, and we'll automate. We can put out about 120 ads by pressing a button, and so we'll automate that on Craigslist. Then we'll go to Facebook buy sell groups, and then we'll go to like landmodo.com, landsofamerica.com. There's a bunch of land websites that help you sell raw land. And so within 30 days, if my pricing's right, it should be irresistible for a land buyer, and we make it really easy for them to buy that property.
And you don't care where the location is, like what state it's in or what city or anything like that. You'll buy these nationwide, correct?
Well, I mean, nobody wakes up and thinks to themselves, boy, I'd really like some raw land in Iowa today, right? But, unless you live in Iowa. But if you live in Florida, or, if you like Florida, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, California, Texas, Arizona, Oregon, Washington. So the Southwest, the West, a little bit in the Northwest, and Florida, your sunshine states. These are fast-growing states. These are states with lots of inexpensive raw land. That's really where we focus. So we want the biggest buyer pool possible, and we also want the biggest pool of options to buy raw land at an inexpensive price as well. So that's why we focus on those areas. I mean, yeah, I could do infill lots in New York City, in Manhattan, but no one's going to sell me their infill lot for $5 million if it's worth, $10 million. They're going to go to the big, baddest, land broker in town. They're not going to sell it to me 25 cents on the dollar.
Right. So when you're looking at these lots, are you trying to target areas where you're seeing new development, or does it not really matter what's happening around the lot?
I mean, it doesn't really matter what's going on around the lot. So there's a pig for every barn. And oftentimes you don't realize it unless you're in this niche. There's a lust for raw land in this country. And you'd be surprised the people, what they do with it, with their imaginations. A good example of this is I made a mistake in due diligence. And I bought property in New Mexico, about 40 acres, about, I would say 25 of those acres were on the side of a mountain, inaccessible, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, no one's going to buy this land. I mean, it's on the side of a mountain, and there's nothing you can do there. There's no utilities. Just to hit water, you're going to have to go 1,000 feet. The well is going to cost more than the land. So I put it up on eBay, and I set it as a minimum bid of $1 with a $4.99 doc fee. And I thought, well, if someone bids $1, I lose $2,000 on the deal, and I learned a lesson. Well, the first day it got bid up to $2,500. By the 10th day, it was up to $32,500, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's going to buy it. They're going to be so mad at me. They realize, it's on the side of a mountain. So as soon as the winning bidder gets it, I call them up. I'm like, hey, you realize like 25 of these acres are like inaccessible. It's on the side of a mountain. He's like, it's perfect. And he was a film director in LA, and he wanted to go out there and film, but he didn't want to deal with permits. So he bought the raw land. And for him, that was like a bargain.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. I while you were telling the story, I was like, I'm trying to figure out what it's going to be. Is it going to be like someone that opens up a rock climbing business, or what's going to be the need for needing that side of a mountain? But I did not see film director coming. But that's pretty interesting. So on that one, you said you were fearful of losing 2,000. So you bought that for 2,000, and it got marked all the way up to 30 plus.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it for 2,500. I thought, well, if someone bids $1 plus my doc fee, I get 500 out of it.
Right.
I only lose $2,000.
That's incredible. So is that pretty common in New Mexico to be able to buy that much acreage for 2,500? Because what you said, that was like 30 acres, 35 acres or something like that?
That was 40 acres. I mean, you'd be surprised. Like, it's a weird business because it's, with raw land, it's a very inefficient market. Nobody knows what it's worth. Right? It's pretty much what buyer and sellers say it is. So it can be. I mean, Jeff Axton just bought a 640 acre parcel for 15 grand, and he flipped it for 150. So,
Wow.
Is that common? No, but it happens.
Right.
It's just weird.
It is. So
Yeah.
this is, I've done some raw land myself, but it's been very much on like the wholesale side of things, and it was near other developing that was going on, and so I kind of already had built the bridge for my buyers when we took it down ourselves. We knew a proper exit strategy. We weren't taking it down and then um, doing what you're doing, which is basically, buying the land at a discount. We were just buying the land and creating the deal with what our exit strategy plan was. Either this is what you can develop on it, or this, townhomes or condos or this kind of single family development, things along those lines. So a little bit of a different way in it, but this is um, incredibly intriguing to me. So you talk about your buyers list that you've built up, and through people that you kind of add value. It sounds like you kind of teach them about land investing. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes we'll find people that like our model are, very engineering based because we're 90% automated now with software. And so it's, those people that, want a side hustle and can work, work part-time. This is a great model for them. And it's really just a great model for anybody that wants passive income that's not like you, right? Like I can't change a light bulb. Like if I were like you, I would do houses. Like if I had the ability to go in and improve a house and make it look better, I would do it. Like that's phenomenal. But like for me, I just like being geeky and sitting in front of my computer and doing a bunch of automation pieces. And so it works really well for me. So, we act as the Sherpa going up that land investing model and that niche and helping people every step of the way climb the mountain without freezing to death or dying because they didn't know what they didn't know. So the coaching has been really gratifying for me because we've seen so many people, their lives literally change. Like, I mean, I want to go on and on, but like I got an email last week from one of my clients saying he was able to quit his job and him and his wife are moving and they're so excited and thank you so much because their passive income now exceeds their fixed expenses. And he was able to quit his job. And, another client, he was able to retire his spouse so she could stay home with the kids because that side income really starts to build pretty quickly as you build up your note portfolio.
Absolutely. So when you teach your students to take down the properties themselves, it sounds like because the land itself is so affordable, they can do that, which is a vast difference compared to like even single family where you're still having to either raise private capital or come up with some version of cash yourself to take down the property. But on these land, it's so cheap, they should be able to afford the parcel itself just with their own cash. Is that kind of the model there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of our clients is he does wholesaling with houses, and
Right.
so he actually locked up a $30,000 land parcel, and he didn't know he didn't have $30,000, so he just assigned the contract. He sold it for 100,000, and because it was worth 130, so he did that same exact model with housing with raw land and was super happy. So, you don't need private money. Well, I had a client, he had no money, right? Just,
Right.
and so he tells his seller it's going to take him 90 days to do due diligence and then he's going to close on the deal. Well, it doesn't take 90 days to do due diligence. It takes 2 days. And because there's no competition, I mean, you're not going to go to HGTV or the DIY network and see flip this land. It's just this geeky guy in front of his computer. It's like the least interesting real estate niche ever. So, the seller's like, okay, I'll wait 90 days. So what he did was he sent out his neighbor letters, and the neighbor then he did just a dual closing. The neighbor paid for it, and he made like $8,000 cash just
Yep.
with an infinite ROI, just by sending out letters. So you don't, in real estate, usually it's all about the deal. We make our money on the buy. You lock up any asset 25 cents on the dollar, there's someone else on the other end of that deal. You'll get the money.
Absolutely. This is, you bring up that this is like the least sexy, strategy in real estate investing. But, I've done enough of these interviews and I've talked to enough successful people in real estate investing, and I'm starting to learn that I guess the least amount of sex factor or sexiness to it usually means you make the most long-term passive income. And those are the people that can be in this industry the longest, and they lead the happiest lives. I've flipped a ton of houses and tried to do the HGTV thing, and I still have houses that I'm flipping, but you're still pulling out your hair, and it's just, there's a lot of stress that goes into it. I can just hear it in your voice. It doesn't sound like you have much stress going on in your business, and like you said, you've been able to automate it to where, like you said, 90% of your business is automated. That's amazing. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? What systems have you been able to use, if you can share or if you're willing to share, and how have you automated it to this point?
Sure. So, being geeky, we hired a developer, and we basically, using like a Zapier.com type APIs. So we created automation. So one of the APIs I love is using lob.com. So all you do then is you upload a list. So let's say I get the assessor list from the county. And then what we do is we make that a CSV file. We scrub that list. We get rid of all the houses and commercial property, industrial property, and we can sort it by use code, let's say VL for vacant land. And then we're going to do one more scrub by acreage size. Because if I send somebody who has 40 acres the same offer as somebody with 1 acre, that 40-acre person is going to send me back glitter in the mail. So then we scrub it again, we price it, we upload it into our software, and then the software talks to Lob. Lob sends out the offers automatically. And then when those offers come back, we have an intake manager. So the intake manager then handles those phone calls, because sometimes, or the letters, so sometimes the sellers just want to yell at me, right? And sometimes they want to sell, or sometimes they're confused. So the intake manager handles that process. We used to do it with a Zap with, I would use like Ring Central, and then I'd have a Zap to Fancy Hands with a Evernote system or in a format for FAQs, and here's your script to do the qualification of the seller. But we actually just hired an intake manager to do that. Now the intake manager qualifies the seller, and then in our system lets our acquisition manager know this person's going to sell. The acquisition manager then takes all that information, and then we have an office in the Philippines, and we have access to an American title company. So our VAs in the Philippines do all our due diligence. So they do the title search, they get the GIS maps, they get the Google Earth maps, they get the plat maps, they get pictures, and they get everything that we need for a marketing package that a buyer is going to want to know on the other end of it. So then that costs us about $11. Then we buy the property, and then the VAs then again go ahead and upload all the neighbors into our program. We send out our neighbor letters, and then we begin the marketing process within the software, so that our VAs can just go in and start, using our Excel spreadsheet of headlines and copy and paste into the various platforms that we want to sell. Then we monitor that. We get an alarm if the property doesn't sell within 30 days or less. We readjust our pricing. And then when we sell that property, the acquisition manager will sell it. We use a program called geekpay.io that gets our down payment and then automates the entire process. What used to take us 20 minutes in paperwork between a land sales contract, a purchase sale agreement, and a promissory note now takes 2 seconds. So using that software, that's all automated. It goes out via DocuSign. They sign it, and then we automate the back end using geekpay.io, where we collect the monthly payments via ACH, and it just automatically hits the ACH. If the ACH fails, it'll hit a credit card as a backup on file. And it's awesome because the borrower never needs to call me anymore and say, hey, Mark, what's my current balance? They can log in and see it. They never have to call me anymore and say, hey, Mark, can I make a prepayment this month? They can go in and see it. I don't have to do collection calls anymore. Everything's automated notifications. And so if, we've got about a 5% default rate. So if they do default, that's all automated as well. So I spend about 2 hours a week working in Frontier Properties.
That's incredible. Sometimes when I hear these stories, I wonder how businesses were ever run before technology and this automation. I mean, it's incredible to see how streamlined you have your business now. It's just, it's a great time to run a business. I tell people all the time, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur and be in real estate investing, and the automation that you can implement in your business is incredible nowadays. So before we got started, you told me that you just finished or you're about to release a book. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, thank you, RJ. I'm like a published author now. I've got leather-bound books. I'm a very big deal, RJ.
I wanted you to talk about your worldwide book tour that you're about to go on.
I'm launching in Australia at the local Barnes and Noble. It's going to set the world on fire. It's called Dirt Rich: How One Ambitiously Lazy Geek Created Passive Income in Real Estate Without Renters, Renovations, and Rehabs. And so it basically talks literally about my story and my journey, and then more of a how-to business book about what we're talking about, much more in detail in the book. And it probably will be bigger than Rich Dad Poor Dad series, if I had to guess.
It probably will be, just because I'm announcing it on this podcast, which is, I think recently we actually cracked the top 200 on top investing podcasts for like 30 minutes. So, I mean, with the power of this podcast, you definitely will pass up old Robert Kiyosaki.
Easily. Thank you, RJ. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, I mean, if the listeners want to learn more, they can go to landgeek.com/dirtrich. They can download for free the first chapter, and then we're going to have lots of lots of goodies to go along with the book, because just between you and me and RJ, just between the two of us, in our little land investing niche, we probably got an audience of about, my wife, my kids, my family. So, maybe 50 people are interested in this book right now.
Hey, you know what? I'll just keep downloading the first chapter over and over, and it'll make you feel better. So
no, I really appreciate it. My ego is so bruised and beaten that it's okay. I can deal with it.
It's okay, man. Hey, I'm gonna tell you this. All joking aside, there will be somebody that listens to this, and this will change their life. Like, they will be able to go out there and say, because I know plenty of wholesalers and even just rehabbers that they get leads like this and they just pass on them. And I'll be honest with you, I was one of them for a while. I mean, it actually got to the point where we were passing on so many just raw land leads that eventually I was like, let's just make an offer on one of them and see if we have buyers for it, if we get one. So we got one under contract, and we blasted out to our buyers list, and it was sold within 2.5 minutes of the email being blasted out. And I was like, oh my goodness, rewind, like go back, make offers on all of the land. I can't believe we've been passing on this. But as a wholesaler, don't automatically assume what your buyers want. I mean, we did not realize that we had buyers just waiting for raw vacant land that we were just passing on. And so it's one of those things that you just have to be cognizant of, and maybe this interview will make somebody aware of how to properly analyze it and go out and make a change in their business. So one of the things I always like to ask our guests is to get a better understanding of kind of what your why is and what your driving force behind creating this business. And obviously it was, you touched on, you were miserable in your previous career, and you want to make enough passive income to support your family. But outside of that, what's the driving force behind what you do?
Yeah, I mean, so now the why has shifted. Like in the beginning, you're right. Like it was pretty much, hey, I never want to, have to update my resume again. And now I've been doing this full time since 2001. I'm happily unemployable. So now my why is really to be the pebble in the pond, right? So if you take a pebble and it makes an impact, right, and then it ripples out beyond where that impact was. So RJ, if I can help you eliminate money stress, right? Like let's just say there's 3 big buckets of stress in everyone's life, especially if you're married, right? So let's just say it's money, sex, and the kids, right? Well, I can't help you with the other 2, but I make the argument, if I can eliminate money stress from your life, right? I believe that frees up oceans of energy for you to improve every facet of your relationships. And ultimately, I think that's really where it all the happiness in life comes from. At the end of our lives, we're going to look back at the quality of our relationships. Well, if our relationships are tainted with so much stress about money and security and, I've got to do this for time, and it can really just affect people so negatively. And so if I can help them in any way, either eliminate or reduce that big bucket of stress, I think that impact then ripples out and can affect everybody, every area of that person's life to really improve the important relationships in their life. And that's really my why now.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate what you're doing, and so many people, they go out and they find a niche or they find a way to create something for themselves, and they don't reciprocate that. They don't share it with other people. And so, in real estate investing, there's a lot of people that get a bad name for trying to be a quote unquote guru. But that's not what you are. You are sharing your experiences, and you're trying to better people's lives. And, I thank you for that. I appreciate what you're trying to do. And, thank you so much for coming on the show today. For everyone that's listening, if they want to reach out and contact you, what's the best way they can contact you?
I think the best way is just go to thelandgeek.com, and they can download for free our passive income blueprint, the ebook, How to Avoid the 3 Fatal Land Buying Mistakes, and then get our Art of Passive Income podcast delivered each week to their email inbox. Hopefully, RJ, you'll come on my podcast. And then if they email support@thelandgeek.com and just put in the subject line RJ or Titanium Vault, we'll send them for free our passive income launch kit course, which is normally $97. We'll just give it to them for free as a thank you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. I'll put all of that in the show notes. And as far as the invitation to your podcast, the only thing that can be, more boring than land investing is having me on as a guest. So I would be honored to be on there to put your guests to sleep and tell them what I do, which I almost think is it's almost as simple as what you do. I just do it with houses compared to land. So
I'll tell you what, my listeners would love it. They would love it. We are a geeky bunch.
There you go. We'll have to get that arranged, and I would love to be on there. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, RJ. I really appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Titanium Vault with your host, RJ Bates III. For more info and to stay up to date, visit www.podcast.thetitaniumvault.com and on facebook.com/The Titanium Vault. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on the Titanium Vault.